Hey, it's your girl Nancy Redd, and this is season 3 of Mompreneurs, where every week we celebrate beautiful entrepreneurs who are Black, amazing business moguls, and awesome moms, listening to their life stories and inspiring advice. Now, I have to be honest, I might cry a little bit introducing my next guest, but they will be happy tears because I'm so impressed by and in awe of the incredible and game-changing work that she and her husband have created together, not just for their family, but for our community and for our culture. Codie Elaine Oliver has 3 human kids and 2 business babies, y'all. She is CEO and founder of Black Love Inc., which is an incredible and groundbreaking media company based on her search for role models for her wonderful relationship with her co-founder and husband, Tommy Oliver. And that has brought us all so much joy and inspiration in terms of its app, its website, live events, multiple podcasts, including where she is right now in the amazing Mama's Den podcast, and most famously, 6 award-winning seasons of the incredible docuseries Black Love. But that is not all. Codie and Tommy are also behind the award-winning production company Confluential Films, and she'll tell you herself that it's a lot, but I gotta tell you, Codie handles it so well. And we're so excited to share a little bit about who she is, what she's done, and how she stays alive. I love you so much, Codie. Welcome.
Nancy, you forgot to tell everyone I've been watching you for 20 plus years. And so that's how I know how to do anything at all.
Well, full disclosure, everybody. Her grandfather actually taught my mother chemistry. So which is wild when you think about it. So yeah. We see Codie, and you've been watching, but you've also been teaching me because, one of the great things about what you've done is you have continued the trajectory of your family as educators, as providing knowledge, because I didn't know how to have a relationship. I didn't know how to have a business. I didn't have a relationship. And you are an amazing inspiration and role model for all of these things.
Oh, thank you. Well, listen, my motto kind of is if I have a question about it, then I'm going to create something where all my questions can be answered. And I think part of that is like having a journalism background. My background is journalism and then film. And so I kind of looked up one day after feeling like I'm not using any of my degrees. And I'm like, wait, now I'm using both of them and all of my experiences. And they're leading me to all of these different things that I'm doing. So I'm happy to dig in wherever you want to start.
Oh, we can dig in so many different places. But what you said is really important. You didn't just jump into this and say, I'm trying to make a media empire that's going to change the trajectory of Black love. You are a 4th generation Howard grad. Mm-hmm. You went to USC's producing program. You worked as a publicist. You've done it all. You laid the foundation to build generational wealth for your family. You are the ultimate mompreneur when it comes to having a vision for yourself, for your life, for your family.
Though, the thing is, I try to remember there were so many things that didn't go according to plan. So even saying I had a vision, I've had lots of visions, right? And I think one thing that's been important for me, even if I didn't see it at the time, like now I can look back and say everything was happening the way that it was supposed to. But there were so many times that I, like so many other people, were like, wait, this is the plan. This is what's supposed to happen, and it's not happening. What am I doing wrong? What do I need to do differently? And that part of life can be really, really, really hard. But I think everything is working out for my greater good. I think that all of the, what do they say? What's that line about like a setback is really, a setup or something. But, the things that hurt, the things that didn't go according to plan ultimately opened different doors that I wasn't expecting.
It's true. And even the things that didn't go as expected that are blessings, right? Mm-hmm. Like you are a wonderful mama of 3. That was not in the cards.
No. Especially not two at once. I mean, I wanted that. Don't get it twisted. My whole life, I wanted twins. And I just thought it was like a silly thing that would never happen. You have to have twins running your family, all of that stuff. Child, the way that these two came, and I had no idea. I mean, and we have no twins in our family. We have no reason to have had twins. They are literally a miracle, the two of them. But yes, I have 3 kids. I have a 7-year-old and I have 5-year-old twins. And all of them, I always wanted to be a mom. So that wasn't shocking, right? In terms of that being my journey. I did carry like fear around it long before we were talking about a Black maternal health crisis. It was like, well, what if, what if it doesn't happen? What if it can't happen? And so when I got married, I was like, we have to try right away. We don't know how long it's going to take. And we got married February 2015 and were pregnant by December. I think I was off birth control for like 2 months. But my point is just that I was like, I was in my mind preparing myself for all the things I had heard. Again, preparation, you know what I mean? You want to prepare, but you also just don't know, good and bad. You don't know which way things are going to go. And whether it's family, whether it's business, you want to figure out how to roll with the punches, good or bad. And in this case, very, very good. We got pregnant, very quickly. And that was the beginning. I mean, and I'm jumping ahead, but we got pregnant December of 2015. We got married in February. We had been working on Black Love as a documentary and then pivoted to a docuseries. So we were shooting interviews completely independent of a distributor. There was nothing but us sitting up in Viola Davis's face like, hi, you don't know what's going to happen with this footage, but we really want to talk about what it takes to make a marriage work. And I use her as an example, but we were shooting those interviews and I was due to have my first son, September 2016. And that was around that time, that summer is when we went out with the materials that we had put together for Black Love, the docuseries, sent them to networks, and OWN, which was my first choice, was very interested in the docuseries, licensing it where we would get to keep ownership. And I had Brooks on October 4th, 2016. And I don't remember the date that they said, yes, we want to license this, but it was like maybe a week later. And then suddenly it was, now we have to deliver the first season in 3 months. So
and you're in postpartum, your feet are swollen, you're all over the place, and you have a newborn, with your first, you're newlywed, and what's amazing about you is that it's like you have a very good sense of timing, in my opinion. Having watched you for many years, as a super fan, just go after what you wanted. It's like you understand the importance of seeking what you want, knowing what it is when you've got a good thing, and continuing the trajectory. Because that's actually how this all moved so quickly, because that's how you ended up with Tommy. Y'all were at Sundance. And you saw
Toronto.
Oh, you were in Toronto. Sorry. I knew you were at some film festival. Y'all are always bopping around. Yeah. Like this year you had 4 films at Sundance, so maybe I'm thinking that, you were at Sundance living your best life then, but you were in Toronto. And you were living your LA life. Getting married wasn't on the forefront of your mind, actually, but Black Love ironically was, right?
Yeah, definitely. I had, let's see. So my parents, I'm like, when I was 11, we're just going to start going backwards here. My parents got divorced when I was like 11 or 12. And so I always carried the question, this is after 16 years of marriage. So I carried the question like, well, dang, 16 years, like, what makes you break up after 16 years? What does it take to make a marriage work? I don't understand. And yes, we've talked about it, many times since, but for many years of my life, it was like, what is love? It was the big question. And so fast forward to this portrayal of a Black marriage crisis that we saw in the news around 2007, 2008. And a lot of my friends being single and then Black women, and even the narrative that the more degrees you have, the less likely you are to find a husband, which I was in grad school at the time. I'm like, huh?
Oh my God.
So now I'm,
or the more educated you are, like I was,
mm-hmm.
we're over here doing the best we can,
Yeah.
and being told something's wrong with us.
Right. That's going to keep us from getting married one day. And I knew I wanted to get married. I just felt like the cards were stacked against me from all of these headlines, right? And even when your parents are divorced, you're more likely to get divorced. And so at the same time that these headlines were popping up, that I found just sad, I think it just made a lot of my friends jaded. At that same time, we were then seeing like the Obamas running for president. I always say both of them. And I say president, he had obviously been in the Senate. And so we're seeing this, and the whole world is going, ooh, black love, that's so beautiful. And it's like, well, these headlines are bringing us down. And this beautiful couple and others like them are encouraging us. And I've come from a place, if I have questions, number one, I want to encourage my people. But if I have questions, what does it take? How do you get there? Then I want answers. And so Black love was born out of that, and out of the fact that when I was giving friends of mine, like other examples of happily married couples, I'm in Hollywood. So Salim and Mara Brock Akil and Gina and Reggie Prince Bythewood. And people are like, well, who are they? And I'm like, oh, no. You've got to see them. But there was nothing out there. And so I decided I wanted to create a place where Black love stories lived, because I didn't want anyone to feel like they couldn't see examples. And that's really where it came from. And I know you were asking about Tommy.
No, but that actually segued, because I think it's very important, because this was you. And it was really, if you build it, it will come. That's what I love about you, is you saw this and you didn't just hoard this information for yourself, right? You were just like, okay, I need to share this because we all need to be inspired. And it's a big theme here at Mompreneurs, where we talk about networking across and down and not just up all the time. Because you were just like, okay, we can do this. And that's really what Black love is. And then Tommy comes along, and you've been doing this research, you've wanted to do this, and you knew this was a good thing.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, just about like the way my mind works, even before Tommy and Black love, or at least alongside the Black love, because as I mentioned, that was like 2007, 2008. I didn't meet him till 2013. Like, I'm a person that doesn't gatekeep. You know what I mean? If I have the information, I want everybody to have the information. When I went to grad school at USC, coming from journalism, I didn't know anything about film and TV. I come to LA. There's like a handful of Black people at USC. There's Black people that I'm meeting out in the world, out in LA. And I'm like, I want to know everybody. I want to meet everybody. I want to network. But, you can't meet everybody. You can't invite everybody to coffee. So I started having brunches where the first one was like 6 people, literally an actor or 2 that I worked with on some shorts, and a couple of my classmates. And then that became like, usually we would have a brunch every other month with like 40 or 50 people. And then I created an e-group from it, because people were like, well, what's that person's contact information? And I didn't know, because I didn't know them. People started bringing folks. So it was like, let's just all get on an e-group. And I say that to say, for me, it was like, okay, I'm getting this beautiful USC education. This person over here may not have the answers to like, how do you create a budget for a movie, but I do, because I just learned that last week in my class. So, okay, here you go.
It's so hard if you don't spend the money to go to USC producing school. Trying to get that information, it's not on the internet. It is not on Google. It is not on YouTube. Even today, quite frankly.
Yeah. And even if you find it, it's still kind of like, wait, what? What does that mean? And so to be able to have human resources, people who are like, well, I worked on this movie and I worked on this, and if you call this person, you can get to da-da-da, and if you do this internship. And so I'm just a person that wants to share the information that I have, and connect people and get the questions that I have answered. And that showed up in how I, made my relationships in LA and Hollywood, and in how I chose to approach Black love. And in meeting Tommy, like I mentioned, we just asked people that we knew. to sit down and do an interview. And sometimes it was our friends. Sometimes it was like our friends' parents. Sometimes, as Tommy likes to point out, it was Viola Davis, who he met in a parking lot and was like, hi. He loves to say he accosted her. He didn't. I would never use that word. I also wasn't there, so maybe he did. But being strategic and thoughtful about how we made those relationships and then how we leveraged what we were doing with the show. We didn't reach out to her. He met her. We didn't reach out to her officially until we had done enough interviews to have a sizzle. So yeah, I mean, that's just how I go about everything I do. Even the Mama's Den, right? It's like becoming a mom. Okay, now I got all these questions. So I'm constantly trying to build community, which is also why Black Love expanded from the docuseries to a website and live events and social platform, because it was like, I love that I can give people 1 hour once a week on the Oprah Winfrey Network where they can see couples talking through their issues, good and bad, highs and lows, and their lessons. But how can we do this every day? How can we do this in more accessible ways, aka live events? So that's really how all of the other stuff was born.
One of the things that you realized early on that was surprising is when you're looking at the relationship, when you're looking at how to have a healthy marriage, healthy self-love, self-care is tantamount.
Yeah, it shows up. So, it's really critical that you're at least self-aware, right? Because many of us are seeking something from our partners that we're not giving ourselves, or being upset with them for not, showing up and loving us a certain way. But how are we loving ourselves? And so we realized really early that self-love is so much a part of how we show up in our romantic relationships, and the relationships that we have with our parents impacts our romantic relationships. And so Black love, that's why we celebrate love in all forms across our platforms, because it's not just romantic. If you're not learning about yourself, if you're not addressing trauma, which is a big word that's heavy, but it doesn't always have to be heavy. It's there could be a moment that shifted your understanding of love in a good or bad way that you don't recognize, or that you're holding someone accountable for, but they don't know about that. They didn't see what you saw, right? And so
or they didn't see it with the lens that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we just realized that if we as Black Love, the brand, aren't talking about all of these various forms of love, then we're doing our community and our audience a disservice, because it's like, meet someone, fall in love, be married, and this is how to stay married. Well, no, you can't really stay married if you're not aware of how your 8-year-old self was impacted by, your dad working late every night and your mom, making dinner. Which isn't a bad thing. It's just a matter of, if you're looking at life that way because that's what you saw, how is your partner looking at it? You know what I mean?
And how can you fix it if you're not talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about you and Tommy. You have given us such permission to have these difficult conversations and not feel weird for having them. You've seen my marriage from literally the wedding. You came to my wedding, and I love my husband. I will walk through coals from the end of the earth for him. It's still so hard. And that's the thing. You feel like we have been fed, this should be easier. But it's not. And especially one of the things that's great about the conversations you have, you and Tommy as a role model, why we're having this conversation here on Mompreneurs, is more and more couples are working together. And it's very interesting when you look at entrepreneurship, self-love, partner love. How do you figure all this out when you're running 2 companies? You're CEO, he's chairman of Black Love Inc. How do you compartmentalize healthily, or how are you trying to compartmentalize healthily?
It is always a work in progress, because there are so many seasons. Unfortunately or fortunately, we haven't had a steady path, right? So making Black Love the docuseries, which we started before it launched on OWN, and then once it launched on OWN, we established blacklove.com and the Black Love Summit. And who's managing those things? Me, because he's also building a production company, Confluential Films. And at that time, I'm trying to remember, but he was shooting a documentary called 40 Years a Prisoner, which ended up on HBO, but that's many years also before it had a distribution partner. But that's many years of him going back and forth to Philly to film these interviews. So being on these separate professional paths while also having joint responsibility for them, introducing kids into the mix, and as you pointed out earlier, just getting married a year before all of that. And we only dated for 6 months, by the way, before we got engaged.
Which that's a whole other conversation, but I feel like that's not a bad thing, but I digress.
No, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I just think that like 5 years in, maybe a little less, I kind of looked up and was like, wait, we haven't just sat still. We haven't gotten to know each other. We're getting to know each other in these short spurts of seasons. 6 months of dating. Yay. 11 months of being engaged. Also, we were working together the whole time.
The whole time. Y'all, you don't understand. This is the most ground up generational wealth you gonna see. Like, this is literally, they were hustling these cameras. Yes. Pillar to post on these
not
planes.
Hustling them.
Do you disagree? Is there a lie?
No, you are correct. We were doing it all. Yes.
No, and there was no DP. There was no audio person at first. It was them. And
I can go
Codie
to that,
would be setting up the shot. Tommy would be.
Here's the thing, Nancy. That hasn't changed, right? The whole 6 seasons.
That's the control is really interesting. What you do as a couple. Yes, talk about that. That hasn't changed. It's still y'all two as the dynamic duo.
It is, and we're super strategic about how we move, right? Both because we know that we can make great stuff somewhat unconventionally, and have more leverage, which is important for ownership, right? We're able to own the docuseries because we kept costs very low. But to your point, so Tommy and I did every Black Love interview together, and to the time that it ended in 2022, the series ended. And if we bring it back in any capacity, we will still do that. But we did every interview, just the two of us, because first and foremost, we wanted to keep an intimate space in the room. We wanted that conversation to just be the two of us and the couple, and not have a PA in the corner or a gaffer, looking at people while they're talking about going bankrupt, 5 years into their marriage. We wanted to keep it personal and intimate. And so that was really important. But yes, Nancy is correct. Tommy was definitely setting up the cameras. I was doing sound to the best of my ability and always getting in a little bit of trouble. Like, why is the mic right there? And he was lighting, and we just kept it really tight in that way. And so for multiple years, while having babies and running these companies, and I'm editing the show with our editor, simultaneously, all of those things are happening. And so I think one of the things you were asking about is like us getting in a groove, or how do we manage? It's like every year, every 6 month period is so different, because there would be times where we're filming interviews, editing the next season, planning for the Black Love Summit, and, having some pivotal season in our kids' lives all at the same time, while he's also making another movie at the same time.
And winning awards, going to Sundance. I mean, so you guys have to understand, anyone who's not in the media and who doesn't understand the sauce of this, when she's like, I'm in the editing room, for every hour of footage there is, it's like 4 hours of actually like sitting there with the stuff. It's just not easy. Going to Sundance with one film is difficult. Going to Sundance with 4 films is literally impossible, in particular in the time frames that they're doing these things. But also the key thing, which is why I really wanted to have you on, how you began is very important. So for anyone who's watching this, like I, like you, really like for everyone to have the information, because until we're all free, none of us are free. And so I love the fact that from the beginning, IP was at the forefront of your mind. Control, not just in the production of it, but in the ownership of it, because that's really the only way. That's I feel very fortunate to get to retain the media rights to my books. I feel very fortunate to get to have IP that I can then sell and resell if something falls apart or ends. How did that, was that always part of it? Because I don't think people understand the importance of that. What is the difference between licensing a show to own versus selling it?
Yeah. I mean, with licensing, we get to fully own it. What that means in our case, because it may be, I mean, ownership is ownership, but I can only really speak to the ins and outs of how it works for us, is that it allowed us to put it on Amazon Prime and give it to Hulu to stream. And I say give. It allowed us to then license it these other places and have more revenue streams as a result of it. It allowed us to create the Black Love Plus app and put it there. It allowed us, if we wanted to put it on YouTube. It allowed us to say, you can't put it on YouTube if we wanted to, because their license was for TV. And so it gave us more flexibility. If we didn't own it, then we couldn't have done any of those things. We have a Black Love Fast channel now on Amazon Freebie. We couldn't have it there.
You might not even be able to have the live events, quite frankly, because there would be, there's all kinds of things. So when people are watching this and thinking about what they want to create, how they want to do it, striving for ownership, even if the upfront is slightly less, the back end, what you can do for generations is huge.
We own the title. You know what I mean? These are things that we couldn't do. Blacklove.com, we couldn't launch blacklove.com. I'm guessing we might have been able. Anyway, that's, there's nuance, right? Domain name is just a domain name if you can pay for it. But the reality is all of those things would have been up in the air, to your point. And in ownership is not necessarily the end all be all, in that, to Nancy's point, if that's something that you're interested in, but it doesn't work out, it's not a deal breaker all the time. You can say, all right, you own the show, but I'm thinking about live events, so I want to carve this out. Or, you know what I mean? So folks can negotiate. At the end of the day, it isn't necessarily one is bad and the other is good. It's just about figuring out what works for you. And again, we had leverage. We had shot the entire first season and more when we went to networks to pick up the show. And some were like, great, we want to own it. And we didn't want to do that. And some own and one other were interested in licensing, and own just, had a better deal. And for me was a much better partner in terms of what they, stood for.
Well, and what you said is very important. It's a running theme. And it's hard to take in, especially in today's environment. You had to do the free work. How did y'all do all that free work? That was a lot of free work. Y'all don't understand. The plane tickets, getting into these places, traveling with these cameras, the film. I mean, I don't know if there's film. Is there film nowadays? I see. That's what you do. I don't know. I was like, wait, is there film? The Polaroids. No. But how did you? Were you still working, quote unquote, day jobs? Were you financed?
So when we met, I had a job at a PR firm. I had only worked there in total a year, but when we met, I had worked there 6 months. Let me take a step back. So what I was doing at the PR firm, because I was never really a publicist in my mind, I was hired because of my film relationships. And my agency had a client, Canon, that had a new line of cinema cameras. People know Canon for photography. They had a new line of cinema cameras, and they wanted to build relationships with filmmakers. So I was hired specifically to bridge that gap. And ultimately, we would travel to film festivals to showcase the equipment to filmmakers like Tommy, which is how we met at the Toronto Film Festival. And fast forward to what my job was to help Canon identify, when should we give a filmmaker a camera loan so they can try these cameras. So we started dating very quickly, and we convinced Canon to give Tommy a camera loan for cameras to make this movie, this documentary, Black Love, because at the time that was what we thought it was, this documentary, Black Love. And they said yes. And so they loaned cameras to Tommy, I would say... I met him in September 2013. We got engaged in February 2014. We received the cameras in May 2014. We had been talking about me quitting my job because Tommy also was going to produce an indie film in the fall of 2014 in Detroit. And we were like, should we go together? Should I produce this as well? And I was scared. I was not ready to quit my job. I was not ready to quit a job. I am much more of the risk-averse person between the two of us. He had been an indie filmmaker for some time. And definitely is used to risk that I was not. But we agreed that I would quit my job, go to Detroit, produce this movie, and we would start shooting Black Love with these cameras. And that's exactly what we did. But I will say it wasn't without like fear on my part. But you know, having a partner made that easier. And then the other piece of that, as far as why and how we started shooting on our own, was that we were looking at it as a documentary. And so with a film background, it's perfectly reasonable to shoot a documentary without a ton of money, or at least to start shooting a documentary without a ton of money. We were absolutely applying for grants at that time too. And to try to take it through the festival circuit, right? And then it gets picked up by somebody and everyone gets to watch it. That was the soft plan at the time. And so with the camera loan, that's huge. Equipment costs a ton of money. So with the camera loan...
So explain how much. That is not a joke.
Girl, I mean, cameras can run, a couple $1,000s. Lenses are often tens of thousands of dollars.
That's the problem. And people don't realize the little frame is nothing. That's how they get you.
Yeah. That is how they get you, yes.
That's how they get you. And then those lenses, I'm just like, what's this? This is a scam. And then the lenses are very fragile, but I digress. That's a whole other conversation.
And, not to mention everything else, tripods and lights and things like that aren't quite as much, but these costs add up. So to be a filmmaker with equipment that's free, camera equipment that is free, that is huge, right? So we're off to the races. We're shooting this documentary. And then we also raised money. We didn't do crowdfunding. I don't remember why we decided not to do that. We wrote letters to anybody that was a high net worth individual in our lives that we knew, or we knew somebody who knew them. And we were like, will you be willing to donate to this, all for the cause, right? For what our goal was, which is to tell stories about marriage in our community. And so we got a little bit of coin from that. We got airline miles from that.
And this is really important, y'all. That is a personalized touch. It's like when you're trying to buy the home and you write the letter, please pick me, I am so great. This is how, what she's showing is thinking outside the box and not being ashamed, not being fearful, just going for it. Taking the airline miles, taking the money, taking the camera, getting what you can to make your dreams come true.
Mm-hmm. And also recognizing that it is baby steps sometimes. I think a lot of people want to jump ahead. They want to have all the money and all the things and have the project greenlit. And it's no, we were really putting this together stone by stone. And even with the miles piece, of course we want you to give us a check, but if you can give us, a couple thousand miles so we can fly from here to there, then we'll take that. And so that allowed us to take a 2-week road trip to really bank a lot of interviews. Without being tied to anyone. These people weren't expecting anything back, which ultimately they all got credits in the show. But yeah, so that's how we made it happen.
So how has motherhood, when you're talking about you're the more risk-averse person, you take all these chances, how did motherhood shape that? Because it came fast. It came at the beginning of this. It came before the ink part of Black Love.
Yeah, for sure. It came before much of Black Love. We were literally just filming interviews. We didn't have a show until he was born. And then it was this is going to be a real thing. But the reality is I always knew I wanted to be a mom. So I was always mentally preparing myself for that, both from, researching doctors in whatever city I lived in to observing parents at the grocery store, okay, so when they cut up and they throw something at you, okay, then you're supposed to do this. Literally just watching people, literally trying to see how, I don't know what it was like, And so I was always preparing myself for that. And I also knew, and this is something that I believe heavily about motherhood or parenthood, period, I was willing to make whatever sacrifice came for that. And I say that about parenthood, if you, it's going to be difficult, but if you want that, then those sacrifices are just that much easier. And so for me, it was he comes first, my oldest, and now the twins, but they come first, and I'm going to get done what I need to get done, but I might not be sleeping. And so there's good and bad to that. But motherhood has really shaped me in that it's a dream fulfilled. it's a forever job. It's a dream fulfilled for them to be here and for me to have the gift of being their mom every day. But it is constant, fast, heavy ups and downs and learning for me. And it just really drives, it's become a big core for me. I mean, the mama's den, right? Like, it's become a space that's what I want to talk about all the time, to not just help others through it, but to help me through it. Yes. You know, as I said, if I got a question, I want answers, and I'm going to create a platform for somebody to give me those answers.
Because the problem a lot of us have is we are simultaneously very motivated to have these successful businesses and these successful marriages and these successful children in a world that is very difficult, especially for boys, especially for Black and brown boys, to be successful, not necessarily because of anything they're doing. And it takes up it lives in my head rent-free 24/7. And I talk about with my friends all the time about my struggle to do the best I can in a world that is very, very disconcerting. Yeah.
And it's like, even you saying to be successful, I'm like, to thrive. Like, yes, I want them to be successful. I hope that they could achieve all their dreams.
It's synonymous.
I know. But I'm like, my brain, like, it's heavy. Both are heavy, right? It's like, I just want them to, like, love themselves and stand up for themselves and understand that anything that comes their way that is saying anything other than, like, you are perfect just as you are is wrong. Don't ever let anyone doubt you or let you doubt yourself. It's important for me to instill that in them. And that's what I think about all the time.
Well, so you're thinking about it. You have your Mama's Den podcast where you talk about it. From the perspective of business, motherhood, trying to have it all, what is your advice for anyone listening who may be in the throes of it, may be really over just only being supported by a job or not feeling supported enough by their job and needing to supplement, and who wants to do something where they have a little bit more financial control and hopefully growth?
I will say that something that I've learned is that you can have it all, but not all at the same time. And another thing that I say is you can have it all, but you can't do it all. Like, meaning it is okay to hire help. It is okay also, if you can't hire help, and I say help, nanny, babysitter, housekeeper, house planner, assistant, maybe just somebody once a week to pick up your dry cleaning or whatever it is, or one of those laundry services, like whatever the thing is that's keeping you from, like, fully realizing your potential. We have to consider that. We have to consider how to make things better and not just accept the status quo, no matter what our income status is. Because sometimes it's literally swapping a friend. Hey, can you watch our kids for 2 hours while I start writing this book that I want to write? You know what I mean? Or whatever. Like, we as moms have to support each other, but we as individuals have to really sit and take seriously, what can we be doing to make our lives better? We good at complaining, and I will do it. I claim it as well. But we really do have to sit down and say, man, like, is this job serving me? Would I be happier somewhere else? Would I be happier if I made less but had more time for XYZ? Or do I just want to, like, make more and accept that I don't have time for blah, blah, blah? We really have to have those serious conversations with ourselves as individuals and then ask for what we need. I think that would help a lot of us.
And I'll be honest, I think Codie should teach a master class on this. I do not know a mother, and, like, I want to give you your flowers now, who is as astute at jugular, what do I need, extracting, I need this. I know you might not see it, but as someone on a bus of struggle, accepting help, figuring out how to delegate the help, just not wanting to upset the help because you know what I mean? It's really, you're really good. And it is a testament to the type of success you've had because you know when to hold control, like when you're in the Black Love interviews with you and your husband, and you know when to let go, like with this other stuff. Like I'm proud of myself. I have someone doing my Amazon returns. I feel like that's really
Yes.
hard. I'm just like, oh my God, what if they like get it mixed up?
What if they don't send it back
Um,
and then I don't get my refund? Like what?
and it's like my $15. Meanwhile, the whole
Right.
thing is an emotional scam. But our time is almost up. You have been so generous, and I know you have gazillions of things to do today, but I can't let you leave without participating in my favorite segment. It's called Mompreneurs Manifestation. And I love
Yeah.
asking our guest what's next for you or what you're hoping comes next
Mm.
as a mompreneur and how we can help manifest success in this endeavor for you.
Mm. I mean, I would say two things to that, which probably are very much aligned. The Mama's Den is just a place where I'm really passionate. I love the girls. We love each other, and us being able to get out in the world. We love doing the podcast, but get out in the world, do live shows. So that's something that I'm passionate about and trying to make happen right now. And the other part of that is writing books. I'm trying to be Nancy Redd. You know what I mean?
I have been on you like white on rice for so long, okay? You want to write some,
Yeah,
you
I
finally
do.
saying it
No, I
out loud.
know
I
I
heard it, but I
do.
wasn't going to harass you on air, right? Okay, so tell me everything you want to tell everyone so they can send you positive vibes. And
Yes.
then we'll
Oh
talk
man.
offline.
Send positive vibes on because I have to do that internal work of like making space. Writing a book, you got to sit down and do it. How you going to sit down
This is
and do it
true.
when you're running all these businesses, taking care of all these kids? And so the vibes that I need are the Codie, sit down, make space. So send me that empowerment because that's what I need to be doing, making space.
Oh, you do. And
Um,
if there's anyone who should write a book, it is you. I am so excited. You know what makes me happy when someone has a manifestation that I can actually help with? Like sometimes people are like, I want to be an astronaut. I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. Uh,
yeah.
but I'm just like, girl, we got this. We will talk offline. I am so happy to hear this because you are wise, you are loved, you have changed so many lives in so many wonderful ways, and
Thank
I
you.
just appreciate you existing and being and growing in front of us all.
Thank you. I try. I try.
All right, Codie Elaine Oliver, thank you so much for being here. Tell us where everyone can find out more about you, about Black Love Inc., about Confluential, your podcasts, and more.
Sure. So I am at Codie Co on Instagram. Black Love is Black Love on all the socials, and blacklove.com, of course. Please follow the Mama's Den podcast on Instagram and, of course, listen to us and things. We're also on YouTube. Black Love has a YouTube page, y'all. And then Confluential Films, we have, I'm trying to say, what can I say? Oh, Fancy Dance, a beautiful film starring Lily Gladstone, written and directed by a Native American filmmaker and woman, will be on Apple TV Plus in June.
Okay, so this will be what gets her the Oscar.
I mean, I sure hope so. I sure hope so. It'll have a
I'm claiming
theatrical run
it.
too. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, she's blowing this off like water on a tree, but these are hard goals to accomplish, and that is why we love having you here. So you heard her, everyone. Follow her everywhere. Follow the work they do. Be inspired. Be educated and be influenced to make these moves in your own life. We appreciate you listening and watching to Mompreneurs. And just a reminder, a brand new episode will go live each Monday on Urban One Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit urban1podcasts.com. That's urban, the number one, podcasts.com. Mompreneurs is brought to you by the Urban One Podcast Network and MadameNoire. Created, produced, and hosted by me, Nancy Redd. Executive produced by Sarita Wesley, Allison McGovna, and Tanya Hoffler-Moore. Produced and edited by Jiminique Miller.